It's refreshing to hear because, frankly, I thought that you were just going to shit on them.
Not to get too political, but I do think that this is indicative of some larger trend that we're seeing.
Now the FUD's moved on to, they're parasitic to Ethereum, right?
Now, new category, how much is being paid by AI agents?
Is because it lowers the bandwidth requirements and bandwidth usage of the whole network, which means that we can add more blobs.
Where are we headed in terms of the amount of block space expansion for Ethereum? All right, welcome to Bangkok. I mean, first time here in Thailand. Robbie and I are running around on our grab bikes, no helmets, just...
Yeah, you got a helmet on today, but that's the way to get around. There's so much traffic.
Yeah.
And these motorbikes just cut right through all the noise. And
it's like L2s.
Yeah,
Like,
I haven't braved the motorbikes yet. I don't think I will. It's just looking at it from when I'm in the car and looking at the way they go and the way they drive. It's like, yeah, it's cool cutting through all the traffic, but I'm like, I don't know if it's worth.
You're stuck on mainnet.
Yeah, I'm stuck on mainnet. I'm mainnet maxi. Yeah. But no, Bangkok's a very interesting city. It's my first time here as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, it's your first time on the show. Appreciate you coming out this morning. First podcast of the day. I'm sure our audience is familiar with who you are and kind of your background, but we'd love to actually just learn a bit more about your story of how you got into Ethereum personally. I'm not sure that I'm aware of kind of like your journey, and then I think that'll be helpful for our community too.
Yeah. So my journey was one of, I guess, it's a bit of a changing of the kind of tides as I went through it. So I got into Ethereum in 2017. Really just found it because a friend mentioned it to me. I was into Bitcoin in 2013, but then there was kind of the bull market and then the bear market, and I kind of stopped paying attention to it because back then I was just young and silly and didn't really have much money, and I lost it trying to trade Dogecoin back then when it first came out. So I kind of got burnt out, which unfortunately made me miss the Ethereum ICO in 2014 and kind of miss Ethereum until 2017, basically. But then my friend mentioned it to me because he knew that I was into Bitcoin in 2013. And he's like, you should check this thing out. And I immediately became a lot more interested in Ethereum than I ever was in Bitcoin because it wasn't just like the money side of it. It was also the tech side. And I have a tech background. I've been building computers since I was a little kid, and I was working in cybersecurity at the time. So yeah, I mean, I immediately kind of got the vision. Like I didn't even need to be convinced. I read like a couple of blog posts from Vitalik and I was like, you know what, this sounds awesome. And of course, like a lot of it was still very early, but back then I was looking at it through kind of starry, dreamy-eyed. I'm like, if this even works at all, this is gonna be awesome. And then, you know, 2017 there was the bull market as well that kept me in. Like, because I mean, as much as people like to try and deny it, number go up feels amazing no matter who you are. Even if you're in it for the tech, like number going up is good. And I think it's just good for the tech anyway. Like it's any time the market goes up brings in a lot more attention. But then 2018, 2019 bear market, I actually decided to stick around this time. I didn't exit crypto, and that's where I really grew my brand. Like 2017, I was really just like a casual observer. I wasn't known in the ecosystem. I wasn't active on Twitter. But then in 2018 and 2019, Ethereum needed a kind of, I guess, like group of core people to really keep the flame alive because it was just such a brutal bear market. Like ETH went from $1,400 to $80.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone thought ETH was dead.
Yep.
Ethereum was dead. This thing's going nowhere. DeFi, what's that? Like, and then in 2020 was when things really got super interesting because DeFi summer happened, and then I think that really validated Ethereum's kind of core use case of doing, you know, not just decentralized finance but decentralized applications on the chain. And then all this money came in, and it was a kind of capitulation of narratives for all the haters who were just saying this is never going to work, and then it worked, and they couldn't say it wasn't going to work anymore. It's kind of similar to the L2 stuff to an extent. But then obviously we had another bull market, rode all of that through, and all the meanwhile, like I was doing different things as well, like during those years up until today. I started something called ETHub in early 2019, or late 2018, with Eric Connor. That was basically an information resource, you know, podcast, stuff like that, to fill the gap, because back then there wasn't really anything for Ethereum. Like Bankless actually came just after ETHub, but Bankless and ETHub kind of, I guess, grew during that kind of period. Tried to better the narratives around Ethereum and spread the word about Ethereum back then. And then the Daily Gwei, which is what I mostly focus on now, was started in mid 2020, and I've been doing that ever since. So that's basically it used to be a daily kind of Ethereum podcast. I kind of slowed down a bit because things get just so noisy in bull markets. So it's
tiring.
Yeah. So it's like maybe like 2 or 3 a week if I can do an episode. But really, the whole time I've also been growing my Twitter presence and for better or worse, Twitter is like the town square of crypto and of Ethereum especially. And yeah, just trying to, I guess like my North Star, as people like to talk about, with what I do is to just correct the misinformation and educate as much about Ethereum as I can, because there's just so much bad information out there, as you guys are well aware of.
I think we have a very similar mission, and we got our start in a university club. It was originally called the University Bitcoin Club.
Yep.
And it's funny because we met in 2017. We were like that's kind of where we got our start there. And then, quickly right afterwards, 2018, 2019, there was kind of that bear market that hit. It was like, and there was a movement going on. It was like blockchain, not Bitcoin. And actually the club rebranded and went full blockchain. And we had this whole enterprise blockchain cycle where we had Walmart experimenting with blockchain on supply chain, IBM, they started sort of incorporating, kind of opened their eyes to blockchain, but still cryptocurrency was totally a scam, and there was nothing to do with this financial world on chain. And then, that has really started to shift in recent years. And so kind of like as you were kind of going through those cycles, did you ever lose faith? Did you ever lose, because those bear markets are tough, right? Was there a point where you were like, man, I don't know, like what was sort of that trough, and then what kept you going through that and was like, no, that North Star, if you will, right? Where like the education and correcting the misinformation, was there something that stuck out that continued to persist that you knew was true, but kind of the market was telling you was sort of skeptical about, that really kept you going in those bear markets?
Yeah, I think that being so close to Ethereum development, especially during 2018, 2019, 2020, which were, I would say, that the most formative years for Ethereum, and has really been the path that Ethereum has been on since then. We're still on the same path of the roll-up-centric roadmap and all that stuff there. I would say that just the fact that I could see that the building was real and real things were happening, the community was there and was growing. People weren't abandoning Ethereum; they were just doubling down on it. All collectively just made me keep the faith, so to speak, and also because I actually believed in what was being built and I believed in the potential here, and I wasn't blind to it, to DeFi, like a lot of people in the crypto ecosystem were. They just didn't use the chain. It sounds insane, but they weren't on Ethereum. They weren't using it at all. And they just heard about DeFi on Twitter or somewhere else. And they're like, well, that doesn't sound real. It doesn't sound like it's going to work. But then I'm on there using it. I'm like trading on Uniswap, right? I'm opening up. I'm like a maker CDP. I'm like, this is real. Like I'm doing it. I'm not just delusional here being bullish on nothing. It's real. So I think that when people go and use these things and realize that it's real, it actually provides value and it actually exists, that's when it immediately shifts for them, because you can't deny reality. Like there's the narratives that form, but then there's the reality. And as soon as you're exposed to the reality, I mean, you can try to deny it, but it's very hard to at that point. Like with narratives, you can always write them off and be like, oh, that's just a story people are telling. That's just the ETH maxis being bullish on something that's not real, whatever. And same happened with the L2s, that for a while there, people were kind of FUDding them and saying that they weren't real, and then they became real. And now the FUDs moved on to, oh, they're parasitic to Ethereum, right? It always just kind of moves the goalposts. But for me, it really was that core community that all kind of believed in the mission, believed in the thing, and things were getting shipped. It wasn't just the app layer. It was proof of stake was finally happening. Like I saw all of that, and admittedly, it was difficult to track this, and that's why I actually started ETHub and the Daily Gweis, because it was so hard to track this stuff. And I was like, you know what, I get that, I'm bullish on it and I can keep track of it, but so much of it is very complex, very technical. No one knows what these things mean, what these terms mean. So I started my show with the goal of being able to essentially break down that information barrier.
Yeah. And at a certain point, it's like all you got to do is survive. Like if you survive the bear market, you get to times like today, right now, where things are very, very different. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, before we kind of turned on the recording, we were talking about like how the paradigm has shifted.
Oh yeah, today ETH has the best narrative of the last 6 months.
The tech got incredibly better over the last 2 weeks.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like since the election, it's like 6 days now. Yeah, the tech's just improved by 30%, right?
It feels like it's been like a whole month since the election. It's gone crazy.
Yeah, that's what bull markets feel like. It feels like it just goes on and on and on forever. Yeah, and then it just abruptly ends. So
we can't possibly keep this pace up, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what it feels like. But then it just continues to happen. I mean, we really have just gotten started. It's kind of the feeling. And I think because we're in it, we're doing this every single day. We're the ones that are kind of like in it as it's happening, and it feels like it's taken a really long time, and it's already been going on for so long. But I mean, we were talking this morning, just this morning, people are starting to hit us up that normies, you could say, right? Where like they're just starting to take notice.
Yep.
And I think again, like that is just starting to happen. And so guys, where do we go from here?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's the same kind of story every cycle where, because we're in it every day and we're paying attention to it, it may feel like everyone's in it because it's our little bubble.
For sure.
And then you just forget that most people don't even hear of crypto until it's at all-time highs. And I was actually speaking to one of the ETF issuers recently, and I was saying, how's it going with the ETH ETF? How are you going talking to like TradFi people about it? And they're like, honestly, most people haven't even heard of Ethereum.
Yeah.
Like, and that's insane.
Yeah.
To me hearing, I'm like, are you kidding me? Ethereum is obviously not, as big as Bitcoin. It's second, it's not first. But the thing is that Ethereum has been around for so long. It's been talked about in mainstream media and everything. But then I kind of sat there and I thought about it for a bit. I'm like, you know what? Like, when you actually look at the mainstream media, they only really mention Bitcoin most of the time, right? And Bitcoin's this thing that, like Trump, for example, will only mention Bitcoin and crypto. He doesn't say Bitcoin.
Yeah, they
and
never
Ethereum.
mention Ethereum.
Right. So it's because it's that thing of you just mention one or like the broader class.
Right.
It's the same with everything, I think. But that was insane to me. And then when I sat down and thought about it, I was like, that's actually incredibly bullish, because it means that there's still so many people that need to learn about Ethereum and then possibly buy ETH and invest in ETH as well. So we may feel like we're so late now because these assets are so big and everything feels like it's going crazy. But I mean, we're so early is not a meme.
Yeah.
Like, there's still so many
Yeah.
people to come in.
Okay, so on that point then, on our podcast with Arthur Hayes and Murad a couple days ago, Murad basically put out the idea that in order for ETH to get to 20,000 or 30,000, the only way, in his thesis, right, which is that it's valued basically as a store of value.
Mm-hmm.
It has to have this monetary premium to reach this kind of 600 billion trillion dollar mark eventually, and basically it can't be viewed as like this tech asset, like this kind of like computer, right? And so Bitcoin's obviously got that first kind of like meme, like it's got the mimetic property of being Bitcoin, and so thus it's trading over 1 trillion today, could be worth multiple trillions, even 10 trillion in the future. Do you see Ethereum's path to $20,000 or $30,000 per ETH as a similar narrative? And I mean, we can kind of get into this North Star where Bitcoin's got this digital gold, Solana's got trading as fast as NASDAQ, the speed of light. Ethereum's kind of trying to figure it out. Like, what's the path to Ethereum at 30,000?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. And it's something that I've been talking about for a very long time now, since the previous bear market, so like 2019. Because it's obvious that Bitcoin is not valued based on its revenue at all, right?
No.
Like it does barely any fees compared to its market cap. I think it's like $2 million fees a day, and its market cap is 1.5 trillion. So if you do like a price to earnings kind of thing on that, or do any fundamental analysis on that, BTC would not be worth anywhere near that, and that's obvious to everyone at this point. That it is a store of value, it is a money. The same is true for ETH as well. Like ETH has higher fees, but not enough to justify a $350 billion market cap, right? So you naturally come to the conclusion that these things have a monetary premium. They act like a store of value, and there are plenty of people who will tell you that they use it as a store of value. Like, I buy ETH to store my value. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not buying ETH based on how much fee revenue it's doing. I've never done that, right? Not to say that fee revenues aren't important, and then we shouldn't keep increasing those so that when you stake your ETH, you get the revenues from that, and it's better, and more people want to stake their ETH, and so on and so forth. But yeah, for ETH to get to 20, 30K, like, and if you're talking about just from a market cap perspective, that's trillions of dollars of market cap. It needs to be a store of value and a money. It needs to keep increasing that monetary premium. And I really think that comes down to the story that you tell about it, the story that you tell about ETH as an asset and Ethereum as a network. And I know that Ethereum doesn't have like a fancy one-liner, and I actually think that's a positive thing over the long term, because Ethereum shouldn't just be boxed into something.
Yeah.
Like Bitcoin
Like
being
labeled.
digital gold is fine, but like then there's a ceiling on it. Your ceiling is basically gold, right? But Solana being decentralized NASDAQ, I mean, it's already worth more than NASDAQ, like in terms of market cap. And also you're boxing yourself into like one kind of use case, really. And the thing is that these narratives are, I guess, a social consensus, and they change over time as well. These North Stars change, because even in Solana, for example, they say they want to be decentralized NASDAQ, but then there's other people saying that they want it to be something else. They want to do something else with it. And that just happens as the community grows. And I think that Bitcoin also evolved over time. Originally, it was peer-to-peer money, right? And now it's digital gold. But there's still a faction within Bitcoin that wants it to be peer-to-peer money. And they're trying to build like these new Bitcoin L2s that are better than the Lightning Network in order to scale Bitcoin payments. But the problem becomes is that, well, Bitcoiners have spent the last 10 years convincing everyone that BTC is not to be used for payments. It is a store of value.
Correct, yeah.
Whereas in Ethereum, ETH can be a store of value, but we also have stable coins on the network, right? That can be your money.
Yeah.
And when we say ETH is money, that's a meme within the ecosystem. I'm talking about ETH as a commodity money, not as a fiat money. People think that fiat is the only form of money.
Yeah, you're not going to use ETH to buy your coffee at Starbucks.
No, exactly, and that's totally fine. And I think that stable coins are great and everything. They obviously have their drawbacks. They're centralized. They're still pegged to US dollars or euro. And maybe we get better stable coins in the future that aren't pegged to those sorts of things. But yeah, I think people just get it wrong when they think, oh, ETH is money. It's not like US dollars. Like, yeah, it's not. It's not. It's a commodity money. It's a store of value. But yeah, I fully agree with that. And I think that even to other things that Murad and other people have said about like cults forming around these things, really like these coins get a lot of value from the cult energy.
Definitely.
And I think Bitcoin is the perfect example of that. Like there's a very strong cult around Bitcoin, and that's where they're getting a lot of their value from. But I think that a strong cult forming around an asset is very, very rare. There's not that many assets that have strong cults, like strong lasting cults. Like I'm talking about ones that last like 10 plus years, like decades.
Yeah.
It's really, I think, only Bitcoin and Ethereum so far. Maybe Solana gets there, but it hasn't been around long enough yet. All of the meme coins that you see right now, besides maybe Dogecoin, have not been around long enough. So yeah.
Yeah. So think about the GameStop era of 2020 was maybe the only other time or asset that we saw people rally around. So I think it is a relatively recent phenomenon that people are forming these mind hubs around different financial assets. And I think that's a sign of the times. Like it used to be like, we didn't have access to finance like we have access to finance now and investing and personal, like self-deployed finance and peer-to-peer finance was not possible or not practical. Like pre-Bitcoin was the first P2P network, and then things got kind of hyper-financialized, and then we kind of got that era where we had more community-driven finance, and the whole ICO era was part of that as well. And so, like this, I think we really can't point to any historical examples of how cults have formed around money until like even in recent eras. Maybe there's some like national currencies that people rallied around. We can kind of like draw some examples from the past there. But I really think we're in like this new paradigm where the people are realizing that they have more of an impact on the financial ecosystem than they've ever had in the past. And that is going to have some long lasting consequences and domino effects into the future. I don't know what the possibilities are. I don't know what results from that. I think, we could speculate, but essentially, like, I would say that maybe like GameStop, Tesla, we have some of these other ones in the traditional financial ecosystem, but crypto has really taken that as a stronghold and ran with it. What do you got? What do you think are the consequences of more community, more localized finances rather than like one global finance, but more localized sort of economies?
It's difficult to tell because, as you said, it is something relatively, I guess, new, because you could say that there's not really like a cult around fiat currencies. Maybe the US dollar as like a reserve currency and as like a way for America to assert its dominance on other nations, but you've never really seen like a similar thing. Like no one's worshipping the US dollar as like a store of value or anything.
There was gold bugs.
Well, I was going to mention gold bugs is the closest thing.
Right.
There's definitely a gold cult, right? But I think a lot of gold bugs got converted into Bitcoin, definitely.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. But there's still a lot of gold bugs, and gold has been doing well. Like it's not like it's got down or anything.
Dude,
it's actually
been pumping.
It's gone crazy, and I think Bitcoin is like that as well, because it means that the target or the ceiling for Bitcoin goes up too, right? If they're targeting like a $15 trillion gold market cap, if that goes up to 20, 25, 30 trillion, then Bitcoin can also kind of go there.
Yes.
So, and I think, gold is definitely much more of a community-driven, like people-driven thing than anything else. Because, if you're like born in a country, they force you to use their fiat currency to pay for taxes and for services in that country. But now with a globally kind of proper global decentralized financial ecosystem where the cost to issue an asset is basically zero, the people are the ones in control now. Like no one's telling the people like you need to go value this one, like you need to pay your taxes in this one, or you need to do commerce in this one. No, The community just coalesces around that, and I think that's a strong reason. What I believe is like ETH is this commodity money within the Ethereum ecosystem and beyond, is that people have just naturally chosen ETH as that. Like no one forced ETH upon them. A lot of the core devs actively early on told people that ETH was just to be used for gas. It wasn't actually to be used for anything else. And there is an argument to be made that because you have to use it as a DeFi token, that it kind of forces people into using it. But the thing is that like people only have to hold what they need for gas in that world. They don't have to hold ETH as a money as a store of value, but they've chosen to. And ETH now has the cult energy around it, just like BTC has, and just like a few other assets have. But yeah, I don't know what the long-term consequences are here. I think that nation states, like smaller ones, have already kind of made their move where they started to acquire BTC, and they may acquire other assets in the future as well. What is it, El Salvador doing it, and a few others. Yeah. So it starts with the smaller ones.
Right.
Maybe, Trump said, and people around him said that they might buy BTC as like a reserve asset, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm hearing that from senators, like the senator from Wyoming, who already has some very friendly crypto regulation in their state, has been tweeting that. There is like RFK, that's very now closely associated with Trump, who's been pushing for this Bitcoin reserve treasury to be added. I think, like, not to get too political, but I do think that this is indicative of some larger trend that we're seeing, where it is a move away from the globalists and the one world government type of use the currency that we tell you to use, think the things we tell, and then this transition into more like, even Trump transitioned into less federal government, more state government, more localized government, less federal, national, worldwide economies, more local driven, community driven commodities and economies. And who's to say what the consequences of this are? But
it's funny though that you mentioned that, like, that world is becoming more kind of, I guess, insular, whereas the digital world is just becoming more global, right? Like it's not like you can control the kind of, I guess, like Bitcoin blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain. You can't like force people that are only in a certain jurisdiction to transact on it, because it's truly decentralized, right? So I think that while the physical world is becoming more kind of insular, the digital world is just becoming more global, and more people are coming online all the time, getting connected. And now that we have a native way to transact value, because before it was just information, now it's value through the use of crypto. It's going to be funny to see those two things try and like actually work in harmony. I don't think there's any harmony to be
it's
had
like the
there.
software eats the world thing, but like with crypto rails now.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think it gives not just people, but some economies an escape hatch. And so you think about some. We were walking around this Thai market the other day, and they have USDT, pay with USDT on Tron.
That's crypto adoption in Asia for you.
Yes.
The Tron USDT.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's big. It's big.
Why are they using Tron?
Right? Fast.
It was
cheap.
It was cheap.
Yeah.
It's not so cheap these days. But what happened was Ethereum L1 was expensive. There wasn't L2s. Tether, there was a lot of Tether on Tron because they issued it there because the fees were cheaper. And then what happens is that it builds a network effect. And then, as you said, like at the Thai market, like they tell their friends about it. It's like, hey, do this on Tron. So it's hard to kind of break that network effect, even if the fees have gone up. But and Binance was a big player too, because Binance was available.
Justin Sun, Binance, Cabal, like Asia. I mean, they got their hands in all sorts of pockets,
Yeah.
We're going to chat with Resnick a little later today and talk about parasitic L2s. But like, just to kind of break into that a little bit, how parasitic or symbiotic is Tron and this Tether activity on Tron? Is there value accrual to ETH as a result of this economic activity, or is it too siloed with its own network effects and it doesn't bring value back to? And you can talk about ETH the asset, bringing value there, or back to Ethereum the protocol. How do you using Tether on Tron as the example here? What would you how do you think is the right way to think about the economic activity that is existing on sort of these roll-ups or these alternative sidechain type of frameworks? How parasitic or symbiotic is that? Yeah,
so when it comes to Tron, it's a separate L1, right? Like, it's a separate L1. It has a completely separate ecosystem. It uses TRX as its gas token. It doesn't use ETH. It's TRX is, it's not money or anything like that, but it's the heart of the ecosystem basically. So I think that those L1s are definitely parasitic to Ethereum because they're actively not in the Ethereum ecosystem. They're not trying to help the Ethereum ecosystem. They're not giving anything back to it, whether it be directly via fee revenue or socially via talking with people in the Ethereum ecosystem, collaborating with them, working with them. They're not doing any of that, right? So I think that every kind of user that's on Tron is a user that Ethereum lost or didn't gain.
Yep.
And I think that's true for pretty much like BSC as well, Binance
Yeah.
Smart Chain. Even though these things are EVM networks, by
Right.
the way, they're not doing anything really, except you could make the argument that the most that they're doing is increasing the EVM network effect, bringing more Solidity developers in who can then go and develop on the L2s or on Ethereum L1. But other than that, yeah, no, I wouldn't consider those to be symbiotic.
But we're still bullish on adoption, right?
For sure. I mean,
but I'm talking
love
about
to
in
see
the
that.
context of Ethereum,
100%,
I guess.
100%. And so, yeah.
But I mean, there's no ties there back to Ethereum at all.
No.
But it's good to see like the
Aside
USDT
from the
sign.
EVM.
On the
You
crypto
know,
adoption side,
great.
it's beneficial, of
Yeah,
course.
definitely.
But on the Ethereum, like for the Ethereum ecosystem, I wouldn't say that they're like adding value to
Yeah, clear
Ethereum.
enough.
Like it's
Yeah.
just it's very clear to me. But then people will argue the same for L2s, saying that,
Right.
well, what's the difference between an L2 and Tron, for example? And well, I mean, the obvious difference is they use ETH as gas. That's a big difference. But
For
I know
now.
for now. But I know people say that they'll abstract that away, and then stablecoins will be used, and that's fine. Like I don't think that's an issue. They do pay, I guess, like a fee down to the L1, and I know that's not huge right now, but we've already seen Blobs. They're at capacity now. They're going into price discovery, all that stuff. But then the thing is with the L2s is that the top ones today, they're all actively giving back to the Ethereum ecosystem. Like if we just take Base, for example, like they were heavily involved in Blobs and getting Blobs over the line. They were working on them with the Ethereum core developers. You don't see that from Tron or from BSC or anything like that. They don't want to work within the Ethereum ecosystem. So the L2s, like as they exist today, I'm not talking about the ones in the future, which can have, I guess, tighter economic alignment with L1 through the based architecture. But just the L2s as they exist today, they're still increasing the network effect of ETH as an asset, not just as using as gas fees, but also because people are using ETH within those economies. You can actually go on and see what are the most popular assets on those different L2s, and ETH is number one across all of them. Obviously, stablecoins are also very popular there, but ETH is number one across there. And I think that the more people that kind of go into these L2s and the L2s are using the Ethereum L1 for their security, for their settlement guarantees, it just increases the Ethereum network effect overall, increases the Ethereum strength overall.
Yep.
And maybe the best kind of, I guess, way to think about this is that the L2s are like the states in the United States, and Ethereum is the whole US, right?
Yep.
And it all adds value there. And then there are arguments to be made that, well, there's nothing stopping an L2 from becoming its own L1 directly. Like, it's not like Ethereum has an army that can go after the L2 and say, hey, no, you can't leave us, you're staying in here. But Ethereum offers so much to these L2s that it just doesn't make any sense for them to become an L1, especially because becoming an L1 actually limits their scalability as well. Because I'm a strong believer that L1s have a fundamental scaling limit, and L2s have one that's just like way bigger than the L1. So I really don't buy into that argument, but I can see why people think that they're parasitic, because every dollar that's on the L2 isn't on the L1.
Right.
But then you can make the argument, well, Ethereum's roadmap doesn't, it scales the L1 over the long term, but not like a Solana, for example. It's not trying to scale the L1 to a million TPS or whatever. And then you could say, well, if Ethereum didn't have L2s, then all of those L1 users would just go to other L1s
Correct.
because they're priced out of L1.
And be done.
So the question in the beginning to me doesn't make much sense, because you're implying that Ethereum would keep the users if it didn't have L2s, which it wouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have this talk later this week about whether or not blobs are good for Ethereum, and more specifically on this topic, I'm a question that I'm kind of like toying with right now is like, is this advent of alternative data availability providers, Celestia, Veil, EigenDA, which are going to help bring much higher throughput to Ethereum L2s and help scale Ethereum as a whole, but remove one of the core properties of Ethereum's supposed value accrual and fee generation, as well as kind of like broader alignment, which is using Ethereum DA, using blobs. Like, are these rollups any less aligned to you or any less like important than the ones that are using ETH DA? And like, how should we kind of think about these types of L2 designs in this broader conversation of like, are blobs good as well? Safe is moving the world's GDP on chain. With the introduction of SafeNet, Safe is taking this to the next step very soon. Check out net.safe.global to learn more about how Safe is moving the world's GDP on-chain.
Welcome aboard on our journey into the singularity. This is the endgame roadmap for Frax and Fraxtal, the new L2 out of the Frax ecosystem that is totally based on fractal scaling. Fraxtal is a modular L2 blockchain built by Frax with modular and fractal scaling in mind. Fractal scaling is based on the Mandelbrot set of fractal images, and it explains how L2s become L3s and the entire app chain lifecycle goes through its evolution. The Frax ecosystem is made of some of the top builders in the space and has stemmed from its OG days of the Frax stablecoin. It is now in the LST space, the LRT space, and this Fraxtal L2 joins the existing suite of Frax products, including Frax Swap and Frax Lend. You can see Frax Ferry, the bridge to go from any chain, Arbitrum, Optimism, or mainnet into the Fraxtal mainnet. Bridge your tokens and bring your Frax assets into the Fraxtal ecosystem. Join today to get the best out of Fraxtal. You are still early. Join today. Take part in our expedition into the singularity. Redstone modular oracles are available on 50 plus chains, trusted by over 100 clients and over 6 billion in total value secured. Visit redstone.finance to find out more.
Yeah. So I think that like these L2s using Alt DA, some of them are doing it because they have to do it. So for example, like Eclipse and Mega ETH, they can't use Ethereum DA for what they're targeting right now. Like they're targeting the mega, I guess, like gigagas.
Which is a really cool idea.
Yeah.
We're getting to the gigagas era.
Exactly. But that's not going to be always true. Ethereum DA, if I guess like you buy into the thesis, the research, and everything that Ethereum DA is going to be able to scale to those I guess like heights in order to allow these L2s to settle there, then it probably won't always be like that. But the way I think about, I guess, DA is that, well, the way a lot of people think about DA is that it's the least valuable part, I guess, of an L2 in terms of what they're willing to pay for. Like people will say, well, these L2s that use Ethereum DA today, once Ethereum DA gets too expensive, they're just going to switch off and use Celestial, use EigenDA or something like that. Which could happen, but it's not just that simple, by the way, of switching off. You also do lose security, obviously. You lose guarantees around DA because these other things are less secure. They've been around for way less time, and you're basically relying on them now for the DA. Because there's two parts to the L2, right? There's the proof and the DA, really. There's two broad parts here. And you need both of them in order to do things like escape hatches, right? So your L2 is always going to be less secure than a full roll-up. Like the way I break it out is like a full roll-up is something that uses Ethereum for everything. An L2 can be something that uses off-chain DA. Yeah. So that's how I think about it there. But I still think that they're completely additive to Ethereum. Okay. I honestly don't think that it's a negative thing, because in my mind, the only reason why you'd stop using Ethereum DA is that it gets too expensive for you. But like that's not a bear case. That means Ethereum DA is so in demand that like it's still generating a lot of fee revenue. It's still generating a lot of activity that maybe temporarily these other kind of chains have to use off-chain DA, but if we can scale Ethereum DA enough, and there was actually a blob simulator tool that Tim Robinson put out, he's actually going to be on the panel with me on Wednesday, who simulated this. If we can scale Ethereum DA enough, you basically, instead of charging like high fees for like one blob, you basically have like an aggregator fee. So you charge cheaper fees for one blob, but because you have so many blobs, because you have hundreds of blobs, it adds up. You have this aggregate fee revenue that adds up. And I think from that perspective, I just struggled to find a bear case for these alt DA layers. Like I as in the bear case for ETH DA because alt DA exists. Right.
Okay. Yeah, because we've been very, very vocally bullish on the rise of alt DAs with the advent of roll-up as a service providers, really make launching roll-ups very easy. And then also like very excited about alt VMs. So I oftentimes find myself like, we started DeFi Slate back in the 2020 days. I'm not sure if you remember. And we found ourselves very much in the Ethereum L1, yield farming, very Ethereum aligned. And I found myself kind of like getting more and more like, maybe we should experiment with different VMs. Maybe we should experiment with different DAs. But like hearing you kind of say that, okay, it's not necessarily bullish for Ethereum DA, but it's also not bearish. But that these L2s are simply something that can help scale Ethereum. I mean, it's refreshing to hear, because frankly, I thought that you were just going to shit on them.
Well, no, because like they serve their purpose, right? Like as I said, there are L2s that want to launch, like Mega ETH and Eclipse, that can't use Ethereum DA because it doesn't have the capacity for them. It just doesn't. Like it doesn't let them do what they want to do. Yeah. So if they didn't exist, like would Mega ETH and Eclipse even be launching? Right?
Correct.
Like would they, because they can't launch with Ethereum DA as it exists today. In the future, hopefully they can when we scale it up more. But then I
They
also
probably have to be their own L1.
well, yeah, but like
Just kind of their own alt DA anyway.
But like then Eclipse loses its kind of value prop because it's supposed to be an L2 SVM, right?
Correct.
And it's like if you're an L1, then you're just Solana, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then Mega ETH literally can't launch, I don't think, because from what I've heard from what they've said, that their architecture does not work as an L1 for what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, it's a good thing that these things exist. But I've also like I think people maybe sometimes get the wrong idea about me because I really only talk about Ethereum.
Yeah.
I actually think that the pie is so small right now that anything that we're doing within the ecosystem is good for all of crypto because we're just growing it so much. And I think that eventually, obviously, we'll, like maybe decades into the future, there'll be some ecosystems that have just really entrenched, and that you have confidence that they're going to be around for a very long time, and that's where most of the activity is going to happen. That's why I believe so much in Ethereum and the L2 roadmap. I think that that's the way to scale this all to the world. I just have never believed that you could do everything on L1, and even like the monolithic camp or the Solana camp have capitulated on this recently with network extensions. They literally said that network extensions, then they're L2s, right? They're literally the same thing, but they renamed it. But they said that they're for people for apps that can't be done on L1 Solana. But originally the thesis was that you could do everything
right.
on L1 Solana. So I think that over time, like people, as I said, the reality sets in, and you can't deny the reality anymore. The narratives you can spew whatever narrative you want, but once the reality sets in, then you have to accept it and you have to pivot. And that's actually a good thing, mind you. Like the pivots happen. Like you don't want to be just stuck and doubling down on something that's not working. But Ethereum is so far ahead when it comes to that stuff, and realized this all the way back in 2020 at least, like probably even earlier, of these roll-up centric roadmap being the way to scale this stuff to the world. And I think people are just way too concerned about the short term and like focusing on what the pie is today, and not realizing that if you actually look at maybe the monthly active on-chain users across the entire ecosystem, we're probably not even at 1 million real humans. I'm not talking about the bots, because obviously there's lots of bots, but real humans, it's very, very tiny. And there is like 8 billion people in the world, right? So from here, we have so many more people to bring on chain and to onboard, and getting them on chain is going to take various different kind of efforts. I'm really bullish on Infinex, which is a project that's being built to create a really nice interface that abstracts away all the complexities for the average person. They're trying to be like on-chain Binance. If they can succeed at that, that's huge. But yeah, I think all of this kind of like FUD, these bear takes, this narrative weaving, it's all just too focused on the short term. People need to dream bigger and realize that we have so many people left on board. And now that the AI stuff is happening, like I'm really bullish on the AI agent stuff. Like that's even bigger, because you can think of like trillions of AI agents being the main users of these chains, and that's just starting.
So
right?
in your last refuel, you were talking about this new L2 from Nethermind that
ultra based
is old. Yeah.
I think that's what they call it.
They call it
call
Surge.
Surge.
Yeah.
Surge.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that they described it as being ultra based.
Well,
They did.
It is a based roll up,
Yes.
right?
Stage 2 based roll up.
Stage 2 at launch, and everything about it just sounds like the most performant that it could possibly be. And this is all in theory. It hasn't launched, right? It's all on the roadmap.
Actually, I don't even know if they are going to launch it.
Well,
I think it might just be for like research only.
Well, the thing is, I think that what they're doing with it is that they're going to launch it, but it's not meant to be like a regular user L2. It's meant to be like a science experiment, essentially, of this is what a stage 2 base rollup looks like. This is how awesome it is. Here, but the thing is with that is because it's stage 2. There's if there's a bug in any part of the stack and you lose your money,
It's
there's
GG's.
That's GG.
Yeah, that's like, it sounds like some Andre Cronje type of stuff.
Like test and prod, right?
Test and prod. Like they need like a Medium article saying this is a valueless L2 token. Do not deposit anything. Like,
Yes, that's the thing, and I think it's going to be too expensive for most people anyway, because they're based and they're using the L1 and stuff. And because it's a ZK, they're using ZK tech as well. It's just going to be expensive. So I don't think regular users are going to go there anyway. But they're launching it as an experiment of like, here's what it looks like. Here's what the end game can be.
And I agree with you. Regular users probably won't go there, and probably because they don't intend on having a BD team and a marketing team to build out the ecosystem.
Yeah.
But these AI agents need a place to do commerce.
Mm-hmm.
You think they're gonna do it on the ultra based roll up Surge?
AI agents could be the most. They're way more dynamic than any human could be, right? Because you can program in certain rules and they can take actions at as quick as they can possibly be done on chain.
Yep.
They don't need to be typing. They don't need to have some sort of like interaction, like back and forth communication between a human and a computer. It's all computer, so they can be doing things much quicker.
Ironically, they're doing things at the speed of light, right? Like
or
a
at the
Solana, like
at
the
the speed of the
ecosystem likes
chain,
to say.
at least, right?
Yeah, well,
Or
yeah,
at most,
yeah.
right? So I mean, these AI agents need a Schelling point, and I think they'll coalesce around the most performant chains, whether that's Eclipse, Mega ETH, Surge. They'll like. There's always going to be some latency, and there's always going to be arbitrage opportunities that result from such latency.
Yes.
And so AI agents, as quick as they can move, are in position to capture on that very, very small, thin margin, but very quickly dissipating opportunity that's available. And so, I mean, I think we're going to see chains that evolve as AI agents. Like the chain for AI agents and economic activity on some of these chains is going to be like 80-90%, and maybe we'll have rollups that are predominantly human activity, and then we'll have other rollups that are predominantly AI driven economic activity.
Well, that's the thing about like the last 6 to 12 months, we've been arguing that like we have too much block space. There's too many rollups. We have, app chains. We can't put all these things together. Like this L2 rollup or this L2 kind of interrupt dynamic has been the big topic of conversation. But we've all been thinking of the lens of like what's here and now, which is kind of what you were just getting at, right? Like we realized as a community 4 or 5 years ago, okay, the only way to scale is horizontally scaling, or else you have to like beef up the node requirements on the L1, centralize, scale to kind of like this monolithic vision. It's not going to work as Solana's kind of moving. But now we're like in this next stage where like we're getting to AI agents, and I think that we're going to see that we need like more data availability. We need more blob space. We need more chains, because what we're doing right now is like block space is like the demand is relatively low still, but like just in any speculative cycle, the demand goes absolutely exponential. And we saw that in 2020 when Ethereum basically couldn't handle it. But now it's like the infra is there. So I'm just curious, like how do you kind of like posit around the block space demand versus supply situation when it comes to L2s and rollups, maybe tying in some of the AI agent stuff, and like where are we headed in terms of the amount of block space expansion for Ethereum?
Yeah. I mean, it's exponential. I think the demand's going to be exponential. The scaling up needs to be exponential to match it. But it's always going to be like as scalable as its, I guess, like weakest link, so to speak. So, for example, we mentioned DA. Like, Celestia and Eigen DA don't have unlimited DA, right? Ethereum DA is already at capacity. So we're already full. Ethereum L1 normal transaction, the normal fee market is already at capacity and has been for ages. So eventually, like if it is exponential, like I think it is, and I'm sure you guys agree, then Eigen DA and Celestia will reach capacity. They'll have to keep scaling up. Like everything will just be at capacity, and you'll have to keep scaling it up. Because the roll-ups themselves, like they might have a capacity that like their gas target might be lower than the DA, but eventually it'll be higher than the DA available to them, and they'll be like, well, we want to scale more, we need more DA, and then these things will have to scale up, and everything's just going to keep scaling up and up. But yeah, I mean, traditionally there has been a glut of block space, but I think now with the AI agents and those getting like a lot more sophisticated, and the thing is they're becoming cheaper to run as well. They're just going to proliferate like absolute crazy. And the thing is that the nice thing is that they're all going to be transacting in like native assets too, like native crypto native assets, because they can't touch fiat because
credit cards,
they can't go through
too many intermediaries, too
exactly.
many inefficiencies.
Yes. And all they need to do is be seeded with some capital, and anyone can seed them with this money, right? Like, it doesn't have to be their creators; it could be anyone. Say, give them some money, and then the AI, if it's smart enough, will be able to turn that into more money and do things with it. And even if it loses money, it just means some other AI took the money from it, and then they all just So it's basically just replacing humans with the AI agents. And I think in that world, because as you said, like humans are a lot slower than AI, and AI can think exponentially faster than us, that means the block space has to scale exponentially to match that. We're not dealing with humans, anymore, and human demand. We're dealing with and honestly, like most of the activity has already been traditionally bots, like a lot of MEV bots and stuff like that. And that's why things get capacity very quickly, is because of that.
Yeah, I am very curious to see some sort of Dune dashboard or something that would show the gas breakdown. Even going back to Ethereum in its history, like how much gas has been paid by regular human actors, how much has been paid by smart contracts. Now, new category, how much is being paid by AI agents.
Yeah, I mean that fees.wtf website.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if you guys have logged into that for a while. I remember after DeFi summer, I checked it a couple times. It's bad.
Yeah,
It's bad.
it's not fun.
Thank
yeah.
God that we got the L2s, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think the AIs will end up being like almost all of the activity, like 99.99% of the
Wow.
activity. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this block space expansion, right? We've got tons of rollups now. We're getting more and more app chains. We just did a podcast with Andre about app chains or not. He's in the camp of like, come build on my Sonic chain and you can just, you can get all your fees distributed. But we're like, nah, man, you should just build your own L2.
Yeah.
We kind of went at it. But the core issue there that he presented and that many people have just always like pushed against the rope-centric roadmap and that Vitalik has written about now more recently is this kind of interoperability. Is like we've kind of unbundled Ethereum L1, right? Like this rope-centric roadmap was really just about unwinding the kind of L1, this like monolithic chain, if you will, and bringing it out into like this modular design. So like, what is the community organization that is required to rebundle this? Because what we have right now is we've got Ag Layer, Superchain, Elastic Chain, Orbit. We've got this shared sequencer, Espresso, Astria. We've got these bridges, and everyone's competing to like win, but we're not coming together as a community to find like an answer. Like, is there a way that we can put individual motives and incentives aside and embrace a collaboration over a competition perspective? Or like, does the EF have to like come top down and be like, guys, like focus on this intent standard? Or like how do we get to a more Ethereum L1 monolithic UX within our kind of modular design space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there already is a lot of work happening on this from the leading L2 teams. They are working together to try and agree on standards because it is all about standards at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what one you use, just agree on one and go down that path together. And then essentially, if you get the few big ones doing that, the smaller ones will just join. Because if you're smaller, you need to get bigger, and the quickest way to get bigger is playing with the big guys and making sure that you're interoperable with them. So that's all we need, just a few of the big guys to come together, like Base, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, Starknet, whatever the bigger ones are, Blast, Mantle, and just agree on a standard, and then just stick with that standard. That's the smoothest part.
I think we're starting to see that with standards like 7683. That one has gotten ecosystem-wide support.
From Uniswap
Across
for intents.
Polygon, Optimism are all sort of coalescing around that one.
Yeah.
I think it's funny if you guys have seen that meme. You know, you got 14 standards, right? So what do we need to do to standardize all the standards? Like
we need another one.
We need to make a standard,
exactly,
right? And now we have 15.
Yes.
But I think that's generally the right direction. Like we just need a good one.
Yes, yeah, but
Right?
there'll still be competing standards.
Right.
But yeah, and I think there are other ways to do interoperability as well, like based rollups, of course.
Yep.
They're not there yet because you need at least a good pre-confirmation kind of pipeline to deal with the fact that we have 12-second kind of slot times on Ethereum L1, and you need like sub-second transaction inclusion or confirmation or like soft confirmations for end users just for the UX perspective.
Yep.
But then, as I mentioned before, there's also interfaces that sit on top of these things that will abstract it away, like Infinex, for example.
Like chain abstraction
Yeah,
wallets
exactly.
and stuff like
yeah,
that.
all that sort of stuff. Like, yes, it's maybe not as secure and not as clean, I guess you could say, but it works for the user.
Yeah.
Like, that's all we need to really worry about is what works for the user. The interoperability at the, I guess, protocol level, like at the chain level, is more about making sure that everything can access everything else's liquidity, right? And do that in a very secure and quick way. It's not so much for the user because honestly, from an end user perspective today, I think you've already got like a lot of options to be able to I guess just interact with multiple chains just from one kind of wallet or one kind of interface, and you'll have even more in the future. And I think the marginal, I guess, end user going forward is going to use something like an Infinex rather than a MetaMask or a Coinbase wallet or a kind of Rainbow wallet or something like that. Like those are more, like as much as I love those things, they're more kind of geared towards the power users than the regular users. Because the regular users, the reason why most of them still sit on centralized exchanges is because they have access to what they want to do on there. They can own BTC, they can own ETH, they can own LTC, XRP, whatever, all these different chains on one interface.
Yep.
They don't have to go anywhere else to buy these assets. They buy them all on Binance or on Coinbase or whatever. So in the future, when we have something like Infinex, you basically can do the same thing as you can do on Binance. Own all the assets in the same account using passkeys. It's not technically a crypto wallet, but passkeys are great for the average end user because you still get self-custody. There's no KYC or anything. And then you just slap all the DeFi projects and every other projects on top of that and let people interact with them like that from one interface.
Yep.
That's the
on
end
your
game.
phone as well.
Exactly.
It's super smooth.
Yes.
And Apple opening up their Enclave chip,
Mm-hmm.
I think is huge for stablecoins. Like now we're gonna have tap to pay USDC.
Yeah, all these like end user abstractions are like, I think, as you said, they're more of like a band-aid than like actually the Ethereum community aligning on like a standard.
Yes.
But like in the interim, it seems like those band-aids are gonna like actually be able to help onboard more and more, solve the more end user problems. While
exactly. And everything underneath that gets improved, it gets applied to these
to the top
solutions.
level as
Exactly.
well.
So we need to do it across all layers. But yeah, I think, as I said, like most humans are going to be going through those interfaces. They're not going to be like natively on chain using bridges and going to the. They're just going to use what's easiest.
Yeah.
I'm glad you specified humans because it's almost like teams, I think, will start to evolve how they're building and start to build for non-human users. And I mean, that's going to be...
It's a new... It actually literally is a new paradigm. I think AI got a lot of hype very quickly because it, the internet tends to be able to hype something up very quickly because the information is just disseminated so quickly. But the thing is that people still don't understand that these AI agents now have a native value kind of token that they can use. Like they don't have to use fiat. They're not blocked from anything. They can actually do everything on chain and no one can stop them from doing it.
And traditional finance is even going into this direction as well. Like I think they just opened up market hours in the U.S. trading hours from, was it 5 days to 7? No, it was like just more market hours. Something.
I wonder how much of that was crypto impacting it.
I'm sure
they'll never admit that it was crypto, but it could be that. But also, I just generally think that because the world is becoming more interconnected and
digital,
it's more digital, more 24/7. Just naturally, customers demand this.
Yeah.
They're like, why do I have to only trade between these hours or can't access my money between these hours? Give me 24/7 trading. Like, obviously, from the human perspective, it doesn't make much sense because we don't operate on 24/7, right? We have to sleep for 8 hours and then we have like outside of business hours. But again, going back to the AI stuff, there's no concept of that for them. There's no business.
Truth Terminal is tweeting horny jokes every hour of the day.
24/7. They work
24/7. Posting every day, all day long.
Exactly.
Which is why they're way more bullish cult leaders than like, I don't know, Murad or like whoever, right? Or like Justin Sun or Vitalik. Like these AIs can just simply outperform you.
Yes.
Because they don't have a brain. They don't have a clock.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's the same with, and this is something that I don't think should be surprising to people, considering that we've automated a lot of the world already using machines that don't have to sleep, don't have to eat, you don't have to pay them, right? They have none of the drawbacks of a human worker, so to speak, or a human in general. And that's the same is going to be true with these AI bots. They're going to rule the chains. There's no way humans can compete.
This world is wild. We just have a few minutes, and I know that we could probably go for hours on the AI, but I'd like to ask you about the Pectra upgrade for Ethereum as just to kind of wrap us up. What's the TLDR for our community? Are you for it, against it? What's been the community sentiment, and what do you think are the implications?
Yeah, so definitely for it. I think hopefully it'll get delivered by March of next year, so not too far away now. Maybe push into April. It just depends on test nets because they're at the test net phase now. If everything goes smoothly with the test nets, I suspect March as a mainnet date for it. It's got a few different upgrades in it. Nothing that I would consider to be like strongly user-facing besides maybe some account abstraction stuff. Like, it was hard to follow along because they included account abstraction EIP, then they removed it and replaced it with another one, and then I haven't checked the latest on it yet, but I think there's something in there for account abstraction which affects the end user's interface there. But the one that I'm most excited for, the EIP I'm most excited for, is called Max EB, which essentially increases the maximum amount of ETH you can put on a validator. Right now it's 32 ETH per validator, both minimum and maximum. So if you have 320 ETH, you have to spin up 10 individual validators. Whereas in the Max EB world, you can have up to a maximum of 2,048 ETH, I believe, unless that was changed.
In one validator.
So the thing is you still have the same economic security, you still have the same node operator. It's just that now, instead of having to split it up into 10 validators, you could do it on like one, right? And the reason why this is good is because it lowers the bandwidth requirements and bandwidth usage of the whole network, which means that we can add more blobs. So it's funny how like you can get from that staking change to an L2 upgrade, essentially. But that's how generally it's going to work, and you just take load off the network. Seriously.
Wait, why does that work? Sorry.
Because right now we have like 1 million plus validators on the network,
right.
but we've got like what 10, 15,000 node operators, because as a one node operator, you can operate many different validators. So it doesn't add any more security having a million validators. The security comes from the node operators. So if me as an individual is running 100 validators, I'm one person, right? So that me having 1 or 100 validators, it's the same thing from a node operator perspective. From an economic security perspective, it's a bit different. But yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Is that because we have to gossip the transactions amongst all of the validators?
I was going to get to that. Yeah, okay. Like that having more validators means more gossip on the network, which means more bandwidth usage, which means more overhead on the network, which means that we can't scale up blobs more because blobs add a lot of bandwidth usage to the network. So we're essentially swapping that out. We're saying, okay, we're going to take what you guys are using on the validator side, and then we're going to collapse that down, and then we're going to give it to the blobs. But there's also other bandwidth work being done, of course, but that's a huge thing. And I also think that it's good for stakers generally, like solo stakers as well, because now they can compound their stake. Because in this current world, you have to wait until you have 32 ETH again to spin up another validator. But in the max EB world, you essentially get to compound your rewards, not instantly, but like whenever you get them, you can put them back onto your validator and start earning rewards on them. No need to wait to get another 32 ETH, which is a lot of money, you know. So it's better for solo stakers, and it's better efficiency for staking overall.
Yep. And anything else in the upgrade to be?
I mean, as I said, I think there's that account abstraction EIP that was. I can't remember if it was included in Pectra or pushed out to the next upgrade because there was a bit of discussion around this, and a few other things that. As I said, aren't directly user-facing. I believe there's one that allows you to exit a validator from the execution layer, which essentially means that you can send a normal Ethereum transaction on the normal kind of where you do normal transactions and essentially do exit a validator. So withdraw the stake, but also shut down that validator. Right now, you can only do it from the consensus layer side, which means that the staking protocols that exist today aren't fully trustless because you have to basically go to them and say, hey, I want to exit this validator, and they have to go to the validator operator and say exit it. In the future, with this upgrade that's coming, you won't have to do that. You can just send the exit message on the normal user-facing side.
On-chain.
Yeah, and then you have a fully trustless staking protocol, which is cool. Yeah.
Awesome, and thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you have a great week in Bangkok. Try to, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's been a great discussion.
I got one more question for you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Could you show the camera your tattoo that you got there?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right.
I don't know how many people know where this is from.
Yeah. First, tell us where this is from.
Yeah, so it's from an anime called Hunter x Hunter. It's a very popular anime. It's a very the scene. I'm not to spoil it too much for people, but this scene, I guess, in the anime is like the culmination of the whole story, essentially, and it means a lot to me, personally. But if I say why it means a lot to me,
it's okay.
I'm going to spoil it for people, and I don't want to spoil it.
It's an intense look that guy has on his face.
Yes,
definitely looks captivating.
Yeah.
But my question was around the next tattoo.
Oh yes. So I said on my podcast recently that for a long time now I've wanted to get an ETH tattoo on the other arm, here.
Yeah.
And I would only do it when ETH got to 10K.
Yep.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
And that's since I've been saying ETH is going to go to 10K since 2019.
Yes.
So it's been a long time. But once ETH hits 10K, I want to get the design done maybe before then, but I kind of have an idea of what design I want.
Okay.
But yeah, I want to get that here because Ethereum changed my life in so many ways. And it's not just about ETH getting to 10K, but I think obviously ETH getting to 10K means that Ethereum has succeeded in such a large way and has kept building, kept improving, kept growing. And I just wanted to get that. But that's the only, I think, crypto tattoo I'll get. I'm not going to get the Terra Luna thing.
Oh, God.
Or something
Nova
that I'm going to regret getting. Yeah.
So, I think you'll be safe with the Ethereum
Yeah, exactly.
one, so.
Yeah.
Let's run this back with that new tattoo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll have our next pod at 10K.
Yeah, definitely.
Shouldn't be too long.
Yeah, exactly. Next week or something.
Yeah. Thanks, Anthony.
Anthony,
Cheers.
thank you so much, man.
Cheers,
guys.